The bank statement sat on Marcus Thompson's desk like a ticking bomb, numbers glowing on the screen that told a story he wasn't sure he wanted to believe. His investment portfolio had just crossed $2.3 million. Not bad for a 38-year-old software engineer who'd spent the last 15 years building his career from entry-level developer to senior architect at a Fortune 500 company. But the number wasn't what had his stomach in knots. It was the conversation he'd overheard 3 nights ago. The one his wife Vanessa thought he couldn't hear through the bathroom door while she talked to her sister on the phone. Before we dive into this shocking story, subscribe to the channel so you're always first to know. Hit like if you're ready for the next revelation, and comment where you're watching from: New York, Los Angeles, maybe Chicago. All right, let's continue with Marcus as he prepares to test whether his wife actually loves him or just his money. I know, right? Can you imagine if Marcus actually expected me to work? Like, hello, I didn't marry a tech bro to have a job myself. That's the whole point. Vanessa's laugh had echoed through the door, light and casual, as if she were discussing the weather rather than their marriage. He makes $280,000 a year plus stock options. Why would I waste my time working when I can just not? That's what he's for. Marcus had frozen in the hallway, his hand halfway to the doorknob as his wife continued. Girl, I love Marcus, but let's be real. If he lost that tech job tomorrow, I'd be gone so fast. I'm not about to go back to struggling. Been there, done that. Never again. I married up for a reason. Those words had been playing on repeat in Marcus's mind for 3 days now. He'd met Vanessa 6 years ago at a friend's wedding, when he was already making six figures but still living modestly, still focused on building his career and his investments. She'd been working as a marketing coordinator making maybe $45,000 a year, complaining about student loans and expensive rent. She'd been beautiful, charming, and seemingly impressed by his work ethic rather than his bank account, or so he'd thought. They dated for 2 years before getting married. During that time, Vanessa had been supportive, understanding of his long hours, proud of his promotions and raises. She'd talked about wanting to build a life together, about being partners, about supporting each other's dreams. Her dream, she'd said, was to eventually start her own boutique marketing consulting firm. Something small and meaningful that would let her be creative while maintaining work-life balance. That dream had evaporated approximately 3 months after their wedding, when Vanessa announced she was quitting her job to focus on being a wife and managing their household. Marcus had been surprised but supportive, figuring they could afford it on his salary alone and that maybe Vanessa needed a break before starting her business. 4 years later, that break was still ongoing. Vanessa didn't work, didn't look for work, didn't talk about starting her consulting firm anymore. She spent her days at yoga classes, lunch with friends, shopping at boutiques Marcus's salary afforded her access to, and planning elaborate dinner parties to show off their Upper West Side apartment to friends who also didn't work because they'd also married well. Marcus had told himself it was fine. They didn't have kids yet. Vanessa kept saying she wasn't ready, so it wasn't like she was staying home for childcare. And he made enough to support them both comfortably. If she was happy being a housewife, why should he complain? Except now he knew the truth. She wasn't staying home because she wanted to focus on their marriage or needed a break or was building towards something else. She was staying home because she'd married him specifically to avoid having to work. He was, in her words, what she was for: a meal ticket, a lifestyle provider, a walking ATM who happened to come with a marriage certificate. The question that had been eating at him for 3 days was simple but terrifying. What if he wasn't successful? What if he lost his job? Or the company went under? Or his investments crashed? Would Vanessa actually leave him, as she'd casually told her sister she would? Or had that been just blowing off steam, exaggerating for effect, not really meaning it? Marcus stared at his investment portfolio again, at the numbers that represented 15 years of careful saving and smart investing, and made a decision that would either confirm his worst fears or prove them unfounded. He was going to test his wife. He was going to pretend that his financial situation had collapsed and see what she did. It wasn't fair. It wasn't honest. It was manipulative and calculating and everything Marcus normally hated about relationship games. But he needed to know, because if Vanessa would actually leave him over money, if her love was that conditional, that transactional, then he needed to know before they had kids, before they built more of a life together, before he wasted more years with someone who only loved his bank account. The plan took shape over the next week. Marcus was methodical, approaching it like debugging complex code, finding the scenario that would test the system most effectively while controlling for variables. He couldn't just say he'd lost his job. Vanessa might call his office to verify. He couldn't claim the stock market crashed. She could check that online. It needed to be something believable, verifiable to an extent, but that wouldn't cause actual damage to his real finances or career. The solution came from an article he read about a friend who'd been sued in a frivolous lawsuit that tied up their assets for months. That was it. Marcus would claim he was being sued by a former client for $800,000 over a software project that had allegedly caused data loss. His lawyers had advised him that the lawsuit was likely to succeed, meaning he'd have to liquidate most of his investments to pay the settlement. More importantly, the legal fees alone were draining his savings, and his company had placed him on unpaid leave pending the outcome of the lawsuit because of the reputational damage. It was plausible. It was verifiable to an extent. Vanessa wouldn't actually call his HR department or his lawyer because she'd never done that before. And it would answer the question he needed answered. Would she stay with him if money was tight? Or would she leave like she'd told her sister she would? Marcus set the stage carefully. He started coming home stressed, distracted, mentioning vaguely that work was complicated right now and he had some legal stuff to deal with. He stopped being enthusiastic about Vanessa's shopping hauls, started commenting that they should be more careful with spending. He canceled their usual Saturday night reservations at expensive restaurants, suggesting they cook at home instead. Vanessa noticed immediately. "Is everything okay?" "You've been weird all week." "Just work stress," Marcus said, keeping his tone casual. "Nothing to worry about." But he didn't elaborate, letting her imagination fill in the blanks. Over the next 2 weeks, he escalated gradually. He moved money from their joint checking account, the one his salary went into and that Vanessa had unlimited access to, into a separate account she didn't know about, leaving just enough for bills. He started talking about cutting back and tightening our budget. He stopped letting Vanessa charge things to their credit cards without checking with him first. The reaction was subtle at first. Vanessa became irritable, snapping about small things. She complained that he was being controlling about money when he'd never cared before. She started spending more time on her phone, texting, being secretive in ways she never had been. 3 weeks into the test, Marcus decided it was time to deliver the bomb. He came home from work looking genuinely exhausted. Not hard to fake since he'd been up late several nights actually working while also orchestrating this test. And sat Vanessa down in their living room. "I need to tell you something serious," Marcus said, his voice heavy. "I've been trying to handle it alone, but it's gotten too big." Vanessa's face showed concern, but Marcus noted it was the kind of concern that looked more like worry than empathy. "What's wrong? Is it your job?" "Worse." Marcus took a deep breath, committing to the lie. "I'm being sued. Remember that project I managed 2 years ago for that healthcare client? Apparently, there was a massive data breach, patient information got leaked, and they're claiming it was due to security flaws in the software my team built. They're suing me personally for $800,000. Vanessa's face went pale. "That's insane." "It wasn't your fault, right? Can't you fight it?" "I'm trying. I have lawyers, but they're expensive. And the worst part is," Marcus paused for effect, "my company put me on unpaid leave pending the outcome. They say it's standard procedure for lawsuits involving client data. But Vanessa, we have no income right now, and the legal fees are draining our savings." The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus watched his wife's face cycle through emotions: shock, fear, calculation, and something that looked like panic. "How long until this is resolved?" "Could be months. Could be a year. My lawyers say the case is strong against us because of some technical details I won't bore you with. They're advising me to settle, which means liquidating most of our investments. Even with that, we'd be starting over financially. We'd have to move to a cheaper apartment, drastically cut our lifestyle, and I'd have to find a new job with this lawsuit on my record. How much do we have left?" Vanessa's voice was tight. "After legal fees, and if I have to pay the settlement, maybe $50,000. Enough to survive for a few months while I find new work, but nothing like what we had." Marcus watched his wife process this information, saw her mentally calculating what it would mean for her. No more yoga classes, no more shopping, no more ladies' lunches at expensive restaurants, no more designer handbags charged to credit cards she didn't have to pay off. He waited for her to ask how he was doing emotionally, to express concern for the stress he must be under, to offer support or comfort or anything that suggested she cared about him beyond what he could provide financially. Instead, she asked, "Can you borrow money from your parents?" "They're retired on fixed income. I'm not asking them for money." "What about taking out a loan with a lawsuit on my record and no income?" "No bank will touch me." Vanessa stood up, pacing their living room like a caged animal. This is insane. This is absolutely insane. We had everything figured out, and now she trailed off, but Marcus could fill in the blanks. Now her comfortable lifestyle was threatened. Now she might actually have to work. I know this is scary, Marcus said carefully, testing further. But we'll get through it. We'll have to make changes, obviously. You might need to get a job to help cover expenses while I sort this out. But we're a team, right? We'll figure it out together. The expression on Vanessa's face was everything Marcus had feared it would be. Not determination, not partnership, not the we're in this together mentality he'd hoped to see. Instead, there was resentment, fear, and something that looked almost like betrayal, as if Marcus had personally attacked her by allowing his financial situation to deteriorate. I need to think, Vanessa said abruptly. This is a lot to process. She grabbed her phone and left the apartment, leaving Marcus alone with the confirmation of what he'd suspected. His wife's first reaction to financial crisis wasn't to support him, it was to flee. Marcus sat in the empty apartment for an hour feeling sick. He'd hoped to be wrong. He'd hoped Vanessa would surprise him, that her comment to her sister had been meaningless venting, that faced with actual crisis she'd step up and be the partner he'd thought he married. Instead, she'd essentially confirmed everything. His phone buzzed with a text from his brother Derek. Hey, got a weird call from Vanessa asking about your finances. Everything okay? Marcus's stomach dropped. She was already reaching out to his family, trying to verify the story or maybe looking for alternative sources of money. He called Derek immediately. What did she ask you? If I knew about your lawsuit, if I thought you'd actually have to pay, if our parents had money to help you. Honestly, bro, it was weird. She didn't ask how you were doing or if you needed emotional support. Just questions about money and whether there were other resources to tap. What did you tell her? That I didn't know anything about a lawsuit and she should talk to you. Marcus, what's going on? Marcus made a split-second decision to bring Derek into his confidence. They were close, and Derek was a family therapist who understood human behavior better than anyone else Marcus knew. Can you come over? I need advice on something. An hour later, Derek sat in Marcus's living room, listening to the whole story. The overheard conversation, the test Marcus had designed, Vanessa's reaction to the fake lawsuit. When Marcus finished, Derek was quiet for a long moment. Marcus, I get why you did this. But you realize this is going to blow up your marriage either way, right? If she fails the test, you're married to someone who doesn't actually love you. If she passes, you've just lied to her in a massive way that will destroy trust. There's no good outcome here. I needed to know the truth. Did you? Derek leaned forward. Or did you need to prove what you already suspected? Because from everything you've told me, you already knew Vanessa married you for money. You heard her say it directly. This test isn't about discovering truth, it's about justifying leaving her. Marcus felt the words hit home. Maybe you're right. But I can't stay with someone who'd leave me the moment money got tight. That's not a marriage. That's a business transaction. Then end it. But don't drag this out with tests and games. It's cruel to her, and it's beneath you. What if I'm wrong? What if she surprises me? Then you'll have destroyed your marriage by lying to her for weeks and manipulating her into revealing her worst qualities under false pretenses. Marcus, there's no version of this where you come out looking good. They talked for another hour, Derek pushing Marcus to consider what he really wanted, and Marcus defending his test even as he recognized the truth in his brother's words. When Derek left, Marcus sat alone with his thoughts and his guilt and his growing certainty that no matter what happened next, his marriage was effectively over. Vanessa came home at 11 p.m., her face set in an expression Marcus had never seen before. Cold, calculated, almost businesslike. She sat down across from him and folded her hands like she was in a meeting. I've been thinking about our situation, she said, her voice carefully neutral. And I think we need to be realistic about our options. Okay, Marcus said warily. Marcus, I love you, but I can't live like we're going to have to live if this lawsuit ruins you financially. I grew up poor. I spent my 20s struggling to pay rent and eating ramen. I worked hard to get out of that, and I'm not going back. By worked hard, you mean you married me? Vanessa's eyes flashed. Yes. I married someone successful who could provide the life I wanted. That's not a crime, Marcus. That's smart planning. And part of that planning was making sure I'd never have to struggle again. So what are you saying? I'm saying that if you can't resolve this lawsuit quickly, if you can't get back to making the money you were making, then I think we should separate. I don't want a divorce immediately. Maybe things will turn around. But I can't stay in a marriage where I'm expected to work retail or something to pay our bills. That's not the life I signed up for. Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. So your love is conditional on my bank account. All love is conditional, Marcus. Don't be naive. People stay together because they meet each other's needs. You needed a beautiful wife who managed your household and made you look successful. I needed financial security. As long as we both got what we needed, everything was fine. But if you can't provide your end anymore, then the deal is off. Marriage isn't a deal, Vanessa. Everything is a deal. You just didn't want to see it. She stood up, suddenly looking tired. I'm going to stay at my sister's for a few days while you figure things out. If you can resolve this lawsuit or find another high-paying job, call me. Otherwise, I'll have my lawyer contact you about separation. She packed a bag and left within 20 minutes, leaving Marcus alone in the apartment they'd shared for 4 years, with the definitive answer to the question he'd spent 3 weeks testing. His wife had failed spectacularly. Marcus called Derek immediately. You were right. It's over. What happened? Marcus recounted Vanessa's speech about conditional love in business deals and her plan to separate unless he could restore his finances. Derek listened without interrupting. I'm sorry, brother, that's brutal. The thing is, I'm not even surprised. I think part of me always knew she was like this. I just didn't want to admit I'd married someone that shallow. What are you going to do? I'm going to call my lawyer tomorrow. Real lawyer, not the imaginary one handling my fake lawsuit. I'm filing for divorce. Vanessa made it clear what our marriage was to her, and I don't want to be in a transaction when I thought I was in a partnership. What about telling her the truth? That you tested her? Marcus thought about it. Part of him wanted to reveal the whole thing, to see Vanessa's face when she realized she'd failed a test she didn't know she was taking, that his finances were fine and she'd just destroyed their marriage over a fake crisis. But Derek was right. He'd come out looking terrible if he did that. No, I'll let her think the lawsuit is real until the divorce is filed. Then it won't matter what she thinks. Marcus, if you do that, she's going to think you tricked her into leaving so you could divorce her without paying much in the settlement. She'll try to get the divorce overturned or claim fraud. Let her try. The marriage is based on her false pretenses, not mine. She married me for money she explicitly stated she'd leave me without. That's pretty clear evidence our marriage was based on financial transaction rather than genuine partnership. No judge will side with her when I can prove that. Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus documented everything. He recorded a conversation where Vanessa called to ask if he'd figured out the money situation yet, and made it clear she wasn't coming back unless his finances were restored. He saved text messages where she talked about needing to secure her future and not being able to afford to stay married to someone broke. He even had his brother confirm the conversation where Vanessa had asked him about Marcus's finances rather than his well-being. When Marcus filed for divorce, his lawyer included all of this evidence, along with a detailed explanation of Vanessa's statements that she would leave if he lost his income. The filing argued that the marriage had been entered into under false pretenses, that Vanessa had presented herself as a partner seeking mutual love and support, but had actually been seeking a financial arrangement, and that she'd abandoned the marriage the moment she believed that financial arrangement was compromised. Vanessa's response came 2 weeks later, and it was explosive. Her lawyer filed a countersuit claiming Marcus had deliberately sabotaged their marriage by fabricating financial problems to trick her into leaving. They argued that Marcus's deception entitled Vanessa to a larger settlement, potentially half his actual assets, which her lawyer estimated at over $1 million given his tech industry salary and years of employment. The problem with Vanessa's argument was that she had to admit what Marcus had been testing, that she would leave him over money. Her lawyer tried to frame it as reasonable concerns about financial stability rather than gold digging, but the text messages and recorded conversations made it clear that Vanessa's concern wasn't about stability. It was about lifestyle. The divorce proceedings became a spectacle. Vanessa's lawyer argued that Marcus's test was emotional abuse and that Vanessa had been manipulated into revealing her true feelings under false pretenses. Marcus's lawyer argued that those true feelings proved the marriage was based on fraud from Vanessa's side, that she'd never intended to be a genuine partner but had instead married Marcus to avoid having to support herself. The breakthrough came when Marcus's lawyer subpoenaed Vanessa's text messages with her sister. The messages went back years, to before Vanessa had even married Marcus. There were texts from their engagement where Vanessa had written, "Found my meal ticket. Marcus is such a safe bet. Tech guys are so grateful for attention they'll pay for everything forever." There were texts from their wedding planning. "I know the wedding is expensive, but it's not like he can't afford it. That's literally the point of marrying him." There were texts from their honeymoon. "He's so in love it's actually kind of cute. I could probably get him to buy me anything I wanted right now." And most damningly, there were texts from 3 months into their marriage. "Just quit my job. Freedom." Marcus was totally fine with it. He doesn't realize this was the plan all along, LOL. When these texts were entered into evidence, Vanessa's case collapsed. The judge, a woman in her 60s who'd clearly seen plenty of divorce cases, looked at Vanessa with unconcealed disgust. "Mrs. Thompson, these text messages show a pattern of deliberate deception. You married your husband with the explicit intention of using him for financial support. While contributing nothing to the partnership, you quit your job months after marriage despite having told him you wanted to start a business. And when you believed his finances were compromised, you immediately abandoned the marriage. Is that accurate?" Vanessa's lawyer tried to object, but the judge cut him off. "I'm asking your client directly. Mrs. Thompson?" Vanessa's voice was small. "I loved Marcus. I just also needed financial security." "You loved his bank account," the judge corrected. "There's a difference." Mr. Thompson's test, while unconventional, revealed the truth about your intentions. You married for money, stayed for money, and left when you believed the money was gone. That's not a marriage. That's fraud. The final divorce settlement was brutal for Vanessa. Because she'd admitted abandoning the marriage and her text messages proved she'd entered it fraudulently, she received minimal assets. Marcus kept his investments, his savings, and his apartment. Vanessa received only what she'd contributed financially to the marriage, which amounted to about $15,000 from her 3 months of work before quitting her job. "This is insane," Vanessa shouted when the settlement was read. "I was his wife for 4 years. I managed his household. That has value. You managed household staff you didn't pay for with money you didn't earn while living a lifestyle. You contributed nothing toward," the judge said coldly. "That's not marriage. That's being a dependent. If you wanted to be compensated for household management, you should have negotiated a salary, not a wedding ring." The divorce was finalized 3 months after Vanessa had walked out. Marcus stood outside the courthouse with Derek, feeling something between relief and sadness. "How do you feel?" Derek asked. "Free, disappointed, angry, but mostly just free." "Do you regret the test?" Marcus thought about it. "I regret needing to do it. I regret not seeing who Vanessa really was before I married her. But I don't regret learning the truth, even if the method was questionable. What now? Now I rebuild. Smarter this time. A year after the divorce, Marcus met someone at a tech conference. Her name was Jennifer Park. She was a software engineering manager at a different company. And their first conversation was about a complex architectural problem they'd both been dealing with. She made more money than Marcus did, had her own investments, and split the check on their first 3 dates before Marcus insisted on treating. "Why?" Jennifer asked. "I make good money. I can pay for my own meals. I know. But I want to treat you because I like you, not because you need me to." On their 4th date, over coffee at a quiet cafe, Jennifer asked about Marcus's divorce. He'd been honest that he was recently divorced but hadn't elaborated. Now he told her the whole story. Vanessa, the overheard conversation, the test, the brutal divorce. Jennifer listened without interrupting, her expression thoughtful. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. "Can I tell you something that might sound harsh?" "Please." "Your ex-wife was honest with her sister about what she wanted. She was trashy about it, sure, but she was honest. You're the one who tested her instead of just asking directly what she wanted from the marriage. Both of you were playing games. Hers was manipulation. Neither of you were really honest with each other." Marcus felt the words hit home. "You're right. So here's what I want to know. Are you going to be honest with me? Or are you going to test me too? Because I need to know that if you have concerns or doubts, you'll talk to me instead of setting up scenarios to catch me in something." "I'll be honest. I learned from that disaster." "Good. Because I'm not looking for a man to support me. I support myself just fine. I'm looking for a partner to build something with. If that's what you want too, we'll get along great. If you're looking for someone to take care of or someone to take care of you, we're not a match." They dated for 2 years before getting engaged, with Jennifer maintaining her own career and her own finances the entire time. They bought a house together, splitting the down payment 5050. They planned a wedding where both families contributed equally. And when they married, there was a prenup that protected both their assets equally, not because they didn't trust each other, but because they'd both learned that partnership required clear agreements, not assumptions. 3 years after his divorce from Vanessa, Marcus ran into her at a grocery store. She looked older, tired, working as a real estate agent based on the business card she was carrying. They made awkward small talk for a few minutes before Vanessa said what was clearly on her mind. "I heard you remarried. Someone from your company?" "Different company. She's a software engineering manager." Vanessa's expression flickered with something. Envy? Regret? "So she makes good money." "She does. But that's not why I married her." "Sure it's not." Vanessa's voice carried bitterness. "Everyone marries for something, Marcus. You learned that from me. You're wrong. I married Jennifer because we're partners who build our life together, not because of what she earns or what she provides. I didn't learn that from you. I learned what not to do from you." As Marcus walked away, he felt closure that he hadn't realized he'd been missing. Vanessa had taught him a valuable lesson, just not the one she'd intended. She taught him that conditional love based on financial transactions wasn't love at all. That real partnership required two people showing up completely, not one person using the other for resources. The test he'd run had been manipulative and problematic, and he'd apologized to Jennifer for even telling her about it. But it had also revealed a truth he'd needed to see, that his marriage to Vanessa had been doomed from the start because she'd never seen him as a partner, only as a provider. 5 years after his divorce, Marcus and Jennifer had their first child, a daughter they named Sophie. One evening, while Jennifer was putting Sophie to bed, Marcus's brother Derek called. "Remember that conversation we had about your test? About how there was no good outcome?" "I remember. I was wrong. There was a good outcome. You learned the truth and got out before having kids with someone who didn't actually love you. Sometimes tests are necessary when you can't trust the other person to be honest." "I prefer Jennifer's approach," Marcus said. "She just asks directly what she wants to know. No games." "That's because she's actually emotionally healthy. Vanessa wasn't, and you picked up her games." "I'm just glad you found someone who doesn't play them." Marcus thought about that after hanging up. His test had revealed Vanessa's true character, but it had also revealed his own willingness to manipulate when he felt threatened. Both revelations had been necessary for growth, even if the method had been questionable. The moral of this story is complex and multi-layered. It teaches us that conditional love based solely on financial provision isn't love at all. It's a transaction. Vanessa explicitly stated she would leave if Marcus lost his income, proving her commitment was to his money rather than to him as a person. We learned that tests and relationships often reveal uncomfortable truths about both people. Marcus's test exposed Vanessa's gold digging, but it also exposed his willingness to manipulate. Both behaviors indicated fundamental problems in their relationship that went beyond the specific crisis. The story teaches us about the difference between partnership and dependency. Vanessa wanted to be dependent on Marcus's income without contributing herself. Jennifer wanted partnership where both people contributed equally. That difference defines the entire quality of relationships. We see that people show their true character during crisis, real or fabricated. Vanessa's first response to financial problems was to calculate her exit strategy rather than support her husband. That reaction revealed exactly what Marcus needed to know about her priorities. Most importantly, we learned that honesty and direct communication beat games and tests. Jennifer was right. Marcus should have addressed his concerns directly rather than creating elaborate tests. Tests might reveal truth, but they also damage trust and show unwillingness to be vulnerable. The call to action is clear. Pay attention to your partner's relationship with money and work. If they're only with you for what you provide rather than who you are, that's not a relationship worth maintaining. Watch for red flags. Partners who quit contributing shortly after marriage, who spend recklessly on your income, who talk about you as a provider rather than a person. But also, address concerns directly rather than through manipulation or tests. If you're worried your partner is using you for money, have an honest conversation about values, contribution, and expectations. Tests might reveal truth, but they destroy trust in the process. Build relationships on genuine partnership where both people contribute according to their abilities. That doesn't mean everything must be exactly 50-50, but it means both people should actively participate in building their shared life rather than one person coasting on the other's efforts. Protect yourself legally with prenups that are fair to both parties, not because you don't trust your partner, but because clear agreements prevent later disputes about who contributed what and what they're entitled to. Finally, recognize that someone who admits they'd leave you if circumstances changed is telling you exactly who they are. Believe them. Don't make excuses or hope they don't mean it. When people tell you they're conditional, transactional, and opportunistic, accept that information and act accordingly. Thank you for staying with this story until the end. If it touched you, if it made you think differently about conditional love, financial manipulation, and the difference between partnership and transactions, please share it with someone who needs this message. Subscribe to hear more stories about relationships tested, truths revealed, and the difference between genuine partnership and financial arrangement. Leave a comment about your own experiences with partners who seemed more interested in your money than in you, or with moments when you realized someone's love was transactional. May you have the wisdom to recognize conditional love before you commit. May you find partners who value you for who you are rather than what you provide. May you communicate directly rather than through manipulative tests. And may you build relationships based on genuine partnership rather than financial transactions. Remember, when someone tells you they'd leave if your circumstances changed, they're showing you exactly how conditional their love is. The only question is whether you'll listen.